Retro Rewind.
You're listening to Retro Rewind with Dave Harris. One-on-one.
Retro Rewind.
And for the benefit of our listeners, we will be airing a few cuts, or if not all the cuts, throughout the month on this album. Would you be able to kind of preface 2 or 3 songs for us, like you did tonight, that we can lead into on the show?
Well, there are songs like, there is Halfway Please, which is about my mother, that one track. And it's written from the viewpoint. I was trying to write a song in 3 verses about from the day I was born to the day I presume my mother will die, and she's not dead yet. And the first verse is her singing to me. Second verse is me singing to her as a teenager. The last verse is me presuming I'm standing over a grave. And that's kind of summing it up. And it's how difficult our relationship has been throughout our entire lives. It's the whole halfway pleased. We need each other, but we don't seem to be getting on so well most of the time. Coming Out was about all these songs about parents, about my father, when he came back home when I was I think about 15, and he was never at home. So by 15 I was like the alpha dog. I was the guy in charge. And then my father came home, decided I'm now the dad and I'm in charge, and that didn't go down so well. So that was about my fighting with him and the fact that I didn't want to be saved by him. I didn't want him interfering. I didn't want him doing this or that. Other songs, 2, as I explained earlier, is about my then 2-year-old daughter and the confusion of what people call the terrible twos. I don't call them that. I think it was a joyful time. Purely, the whole thing is it's frustrating for them, not, and the worst thing about what people consider the terrible twos is that's the parent getting frustrated. The parent, it's not their job to get frustrated. Your job is to help the frustrated child. And so it's all about like watching my 2-year-old daughter trying to communicate with me, but she couldn't, because she couldn't really talk yet, and she was getting frustrated, and they cry and they scream and do those kind of things, but it's just frustration. It's not a big deal. If you're calm and dealing with it, then you can work around it. So it was actually the joy. 2 is actually about the joy of her being 2.
I have 6 children, so I know.
6?
I have.
You know when to stop Catholic?
No, actually not. Just hillbilly.
Redneck.
So but it's a wonderful thing. It's a great approach and an explanation there, because I never have understood that term, that quote, terrible twos.
Yeah, there's no terrible. There is nothing terrible about a 2-year-old kid. They're not advanced enough or developed enough to be terrible or to be mean or to be nasty. They're just frustrated. That's it. And once you can get over that frustration, you realize the joy of it, and you just got to help them. What it is people call it the terrible twos because it's terrible for the parent if you don't understand it and you don't get it. It's nothing to do with the child. The child is just going through that age where it's hard to communicate and they get frustrated. And for me, it was kind of a joy. The same, there are lyrics in there about the frustration of having to deal with it, but then when I have to leave, I miss her. And it's like kind of, give me a break from this, and I don't want a break from this. I miss them too much. Yeah. So, you got to embrace that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Now, of course, the song that's getting a lot of airplay and recognition right now, 7 of Sundays. I think I wrote to you and told you that I've known that song for like 10 years because of Chesney, yeah. And Julian Lennon's a good friend of mine and the show's, and I noticed on your website how he's picked it, that the duet. The artist is it So?
Yeah, Sophie, her name is, yeah.
It's really good. It's weird for me because I'm one of the rare people that heard the song years ago in a couple of different versions.
I heard the first demo as well, of course, because he wrote it with Charlton.
Right.
But it was one of those songs. I'm like, that's such a great song. I just don't like the way it's done. But it was one of those things with Charlton. I'm like, that's such a fantastic song you've written with Ches, but it's not a rock song. It's more tender than that. Yeah. It should be, it should be more of a love song than a kind of, the way Ches did it was more bombastic.
Right.
And for me, it's just a lot more tender than that. So that's the way I approached it.
And I think I even had a version that there's drums on it. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a drum song. I don't think. I think at least in the way that they did it.
No, it's not that. It's not that big, rock song thing. I mean, and as I was explaining earlier, sometimes when you do other people's songs, and that's one of, another.
You've made that one yours, I think.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that if it's your emotion, then that's different. And it was like Yellow for me. When I did that song, it was, again, not a love song. Chesney wrote it about his then wife. I think they just got married at the time. For me, it was more about my children. And I think there was one line in it, because we'd always wanted to have a family, and eventually, we got around to it, time and situation permitting. And there was the one line, I think, that hit home to me was the, everything that I've envied, I have become. And it was that, I've always wanted the family, now I have the family, and now what to do with it. So actually, again, it was one of those songs, again, that for me, I'm singing to my kids. But
let's talk a little bit about, before we do, we'll wrap up with some TFF real quick, but let's talk about you becoming a citizen last year. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I mean, I did it when I did it purely to vote in this election, as you can tell. I mean, I've been wanting to do it for a while, and my kids are American. I've lived here for 20 years. I pay taxes here. It seems pointless it seems silly that I can't vote. But you have to become a citizen to vote, even though you can give the government, your X% of your income, but you still have no say how the government's run. But we just kind of never did it. My wife my wife is British as well. So last year with this election, we felt it was an important one. We knew at some point we had to do it. I mean, actually, for other reasons, not business, but security reasons for our kids. And I mean financial ones, that if anything ever happened to us, there would have to be an American executor. They don't allow foreign executors of the will, so you have to be an American, apparently, because only Americans can look after other people's money. I mean, it's a weird law, whatever it is. But if your estate is worth over a certain amount, you can't, only an American citizen can deal with that. So even if I had died, and my wife, who was then a British citizen as well, got all the money, she'd still have to go to an executor to spend it. I mean, it's a crazy law.
So you had to bone up a little bit on some stuff.
Well, I mean, accountants, lawyers, they bone you up for, a few $100s an hour.
Of course.
But also, and in the end, like I say, it was, the election was coming. I started looking at the candidates. I started liking Barack Obama, and went to see a few of his speeches, and I decided that this was a good time, as good a time as any, to become a citizen in what I consider to be a very important election.
Well, it's one of the most important, I think, right now. At least in a long while.
Certainly in my lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Retro Rewind.
With Dave Harris.
Retro Rewind. Retro Rewind. One on one.